Levin. And 2 years later, he actually took over the business. W.M. Clark Drapery dominated the clothing trade for 84 years until 1984. 2 of his sons took over the business, Bill, the menswear, and Elston, the drapery. Although considerably down in size, the business is still run today by the descendants of Walter. Walter had an interest in the progress and welfare of the town. He was actively involved in many organisations, including the Volunteer Fire Brigade, the Vigilance Committee, the Levin Tennis, Bowling, Golf and Racing Clubs. He was a Mason, and he was involved with the A&P Association and the Levin Band. He was active in business until a year before his death in 1934. And I'd like to invite Linda Fletcher, on behalf of the family, to receive the plaque. Right, the last of our sort of pioneers and business people in this run. Philip Goldsmith was born in Aslacton, Norfolk, England in 1857. Philip came to New Zealand in 1879. He became involved in farming. He married Catherine Williams in 1881 in Canterbury. He was working as a farm manager at that time. But in 1890, the farm was sold. So the couple decided to move to Gisborne. And they were there for 9 years. But after some business problems, they decided to move to Levin in 1900. He took up the role of secretary accountant for the experimental state farm. He was in this role until 1915. When Levin was declared a borough in 1906, Philip also became the first town clerk. He held this part-time role until 1915 also. He then took on the full-time job as the county clerk for the Horowhenua County Council. In this position, he showed his meticulous nature, sorting out the poorly organised paperwork and setting up processes for administration in the county office. In 1922, Philip became secretary of the Horowhenua Electric Power Board. He continued in this role until 1929. In the meantime, he became a Levin Borough Councillor in 1919 until 1932. He competed for the mayoralty in 1923 and in 1925, however was defeated both times. But in 1932, he was unanimously voted in as mayor by his fellow councillors. He held the mayoralty until 1941, finally retiring at the age of 85. I'm not sure that you really want to emulate that, really. He was involved in many organisations in the community and was a devout member of the Methodist Church. Philip and Catherine had 6 children and 17 grandchildren. He died in 1946 after an unprecedented record of service to the Horowhenua community at the age of 89. And I'd like to invite Graham Goldsmith, the great-grandson, to receive the plaque. Thank you very much. I'll hand back over to Bruce.
Kevin. We're going to have a change of era now. There are a few more pioneer settlers to be honoured a little later on. But we're coming a little more up to date now. Joy Carter. Joy was born in a cottage on a poultry farm in Roslyn Road, Levin, in 1936, so can truly be said to have been hatched into Levin. And, like a young chick, she wobbled a bit before finding a firm perch in life. 7 different schools in her first 9 years were withheld, as her family shifted about in search of work and affordable accommodation. Finally, 3 primary years settled in Otaki, and then a move to Foxton that lasted throughout her teenage years brought stability and contentment as Joy discovered reading and writing would be her calling. By the age of 16, Joy was children's page editor at the Manawatu Daily Times. 40 years on, she was awarded the OBE for her services to children's literature. And another 13 years on, in 2005, she was a Dame Commander of the New Zealand Order of Merit. She's written countless young reader books, eagerly devoured by children right across the world. Her characters, like Mrs. Wishy-Washy, Krabby Cat, instantly recognised in all of those places. She's also penned 7 adult novels, some of which have become films. After a lifetime devoted to stimulating children to read, Joy's still writing. She's going to be 85 on Saturday, and we were hoping that she would be here tonight. She writes, even though her eyesight is failing, and she lives in Featherston. Her husband Terry is also still alive, but he's just not quite as lively as she is. And unfortunately, she decided almost at the last minute that while she was really committed to coming over here tonight, she would love to have been here. Her first priority was really to be with Terry. So it's a great shame that Dame Joy Cowley is not with us tonight, but she's promised to come over and do some readings and storytelling in the library when Terry is a little better. So in her place, Sharon Wandon, Lady Mayoress, will accept the plaque because it's going to be placed right outside Wandon's shop, Paper Plus. So please come forward, Sharon Wandon. Robert Milpera Takaroa stands out absolutely as one of the few internationally successful sportsmen to have come from Horowhenua. A World Series champion softballer with the New Zealand Black Sox in 1996, and as our country's pitching coach, 3 further World Series titles in 2000, 2004, and also in 2013. Chub, he's always been chubby, was born in 1963, and he grew up in Meadowvale Drive here in Levin. Then there were only fields between their place and Levin East School, wide open spaces for hitting a ball about, and with brothers William and Mac, they used those fields to great advantage. Softball is a game that can be played by 3, a pitcher, a batter, a fielder. Chubb found his métier in pitching. By age 14, he was representing Horowhenua at the National Interprovincial Tournament, understudy to Kevin Matakatia, his first softball idol. By the age of 19, and already a New Zealand B rep, he begun an annual pattern of flying to the USA to play the northern summer season as a continuation of our southern hemisphere season. He played 13 summers in the United States and was 5 times named in the International Softball Congress's all-world first team. With the New Zealand Black Sox, Chubb had to suffer the pain of loss in 2 world finals in 1988 and 1992, before they finally swept the board at the 1996 World Series in Michigan. A heart condition forced his retirement from playing in 1999, but it didn't stop him from coaching and those 3 further world titles for New Zealand. Today, he runs his own pitching and catching academy in Hastings, and he's head of physical education at Te Kura Kaupapa Māori Ngāti Kahununu Ki Paratonga in Hastings. And it's with great pleasure, that I invite Chubb to come forward and join Horowhenua's Walk of Fame. Chubb.
Basil Garden was born in England in 1864. In 1879, his parents decided to immigrate to New Zealand with the intention to open a general store. They brought with them large stocks of goods. Unfortunately, his father died at sea on the voyage. However, his mother opened a store in Carterton. Basil would have helped in the store. In 1891, at the age of 27, he moved to Levin. He became part owner of a shop on the northwest corner of Oxford and Queen Streets. The shop was called the Manawatu Cooperative Store. He relinquished his interest in 1907. In 1893, he had married Charlotte Sullivan. They had 2 children. When Levin became a borough in 1906, he became the first mayor in a contest against John Davies and Charlie Williams. He was never challenged in an election, remaining as mayor until 1915. He stood down because of his ill health. He then took over the role of town clerk from Philip Goldsmith. He had a reputation of being a quiet and patient man, very clear about processes, who held together a talented and forceful group of councillors without compromising his own views for the sake of peace. He encouraged the establishment and became actively involved in many organisations, and I counted about 15 of them. In 1920, after a long illness, Basil died at the relatively young age of 56. Representing Basil Gardner tonight is his great-granddaughter, Jenna Kurzweil. George Silk was born in Levin in 1916. He first took up photography as a hobby in his youth. After school at age 18, he moved to Auckland to learn his craft, working in the camera shop. In 1939, he offered his services to the New Zealand government to be a war photographer. He was turned down, so he offered his services to the Australian Prime Minister and was hired. He covered all the war zones for the Australians and Europe and Life for Life magazine. In 1942 in New Guinea, he took what was probably his most famous photo. This iconic image is still revered in Australia and is reproduced in a bronze statue. The image got him hired by Life the following year. He was captured at Tobruk but escaped, was a survivor of a glider crash and was wounded by a grenade. At the end of the war, he commandeered a B-29 to take photos of devastated Japan, including after the Nagasaki atomic bomb was dropped. After the war, he turned his hand to adventure sports and exploration stories. He became a specialist in outdoor sports photography. George was respected for his versatility, persistence, courage, and doing whatever it took to get the picture. He won the Life magazine Photographer of the Year award 4 times. He married Marjorie Shiver in 1947, the year he took out US citizenship. They have 3 children. He died in 2004 in Newark, Connecticut. Although he only had a brief connection to the Horowhenua, we celebrate his worldwide photojournalism achievements. Representing George Silk tonight is his granddaughter, Kate Lickett. Where his father established a sawmill. His brothers Ewan and Ivan formed a partnership as shearing contractors. Godfrey joined them aged 16. The brothers had developed a shearing style that became known as the Bowen technique. In 1953, Godfrey brought his family to Levin to live. In the same year, he set a world record in shearing 456 ewes in 9 hours at the Acres station at Opiki. A New Zealand Wool Board member saw him in action and realised the potential for the wool industry. He was hired as the chief instructor for the Wool Board's ewe shearing section. He trained instructors and began senior instruction courses at Massey and Lincoln agricultural courses. He wrote a book called All Away, published in 1955. He helped organise and compete in the first Golden Shears. He was a shearing consultant in several countries and did many overseas demonstration tours. At the age of 55, he competed for New Zealand at the World Championships in England. He married Mavis Telford in 1946. They have 4 children. He was a devoted family man, a gifted public speaker and motivator, a successful businessman and an exceptionally hard worker. He was a Rotarian, elder of the Gospel Chapel, and helped establish Forest Lakes Christian Camp in El Rancho in Waikanae. He died in 1994 at age 71. Representing Godfrey Bond tonight, his daughter, Derwin Putney. Bill Skelton was born in Compton, Greymouth in 1931. He was the oldest of 9 children. At 30, he was approached and asked if he was interested in becoming a jockey. After discussions with his family, he signed up to be an apprentice jockey with Lionel Pratt at Orari, which is South Canterbury, in April 1945. His full licence was granted in August 1951. His first ride was at Reefton in 1946 on a horse called Ohapi. They finished 4th. His first win was at Wingatui, in October 1947. He was the leading apprentice for 4 consecutive years. In 1955, he married Nella, the stepdaughter of Fred Pratt, his boss's brother. She used to stay at her uncle Lionel's when she first met Bill when she was 12. They had 3 children. Bill and Nella bought their first house in Oamaru, where Bill was riding from the Norman Dwyer stable. Fred Pratt moved his training and racing base to Levin. Bill started trips to the North Island to ride and found it attractive as a place to be for a jockey. Familiar with Levin, he bought a 1/4-acre section, and in 1963 the family moved north. They sold the first section and purchased a property in Roslyn Road. Bill was New Zealand champion jockey 7 times. He rode a record 124 winners in the 1967-68 season. In May 1980, he became the first jockey to ride 2,000 horse winners. His final tally was 2,179, including 15 overseas. In 1985, at the age of 53, Bill retired from riding. He started training horses on their Roslyn Road property. In 1989, they purchased a 4-acre block on Makamaka Road beside the racecourse, where they built a new home and stables for which to continue his training. Sadly, Bill suffered a stroke in 1994. He died in 2016, aged 85. Representing Bill Skelton tonight is his widow, Nella Skelton. The youngest of 6 children. The family lived in Middlesex Street. Just after she started school, the family left Levin. Moving around a lot, they ended up in Wellington. Rebecca attended Kelvin Normal School and Wellington Girls College. Despite being an A student, she left school at 16 to work before moving back home to care for her father. She also took deportment lessons and started part-time modelling. She was asked to audition for TV productions, landing her first major role in the kidult TV series Sea Urchin. At 19, she went to Australia, secured an agent, and auditioned for various TV and film roles. Within 2 weeks, she received 2 TV offers. The first was the children's series Zoo Family. Then came the role of Emma Plimpton in The Flying Doctors. Then it was Come In Spin It. Since then, there have been numerous TV series, with special mention of Halifax FP and Packed to the Rafters, and movies including the acclaimed film Mental. In 2000, she married fellow New Zealander Richard Bell. They have been happily living back in New Zealand near Queenstown since 2017. They have a son, Zach. Rebecca has received numerous film and TV industry awards and has been the subject of a Who Do You Think You Are program in 2016. Although she only had a brief connection to the Horowhenua, we celebrate her Australian and New Zealand-wide acting achievements. The Bell family cannot be here tonight as Rebecca is currently working in Australia. Representing her tonight is Dan Delaney, who is also from the same period of living in Middlesex Street. Carlos Spencer was born in Levin in 1975. He attended Tautoko Primary School, Levin Intermediate and Waipahu College. From early on, he was a natural sportsman. He raced BMX and was a gifted softballer. He made the age group softball teams from under 14s to under 16 in 1990 and 91. At the age of 16, while still at college, he played first-class rugby for Horowhenua. In 1992, he was in the New Zealand Secondary School's rugby team. In 1993, he showed glimpses of his promise with the Ranfurly Shield game at home against Auckland. This brought him to the attention of Graham Henry, who persuaded Carlos to move to Auckland to play for Auckland and eventually the Blues Super Rugby team. He made his All Black debut against Argentina in 1997. His last All Black game was against Australia in 2004. Carlos also played for the New Zealand Maori between 1994 and 2006, a team that he cherished playing for. He married Jodine Williams in 2005. They had 2 children. He then moved overseas and played for Northampton Saints and Gloucester. He also played for the World 15 in 2006. He then moved to South Africa as player coach for the Lions Super Rugby team for 3 seasons, then 1 season for the Sharks and 1 for the Kings. He moved back to New Zealand to settle in Hamilton in 2015. Carlos was known as an attacker with a flair for the unorthodox and the unexpected. He was often referred to as King Carlos. He played 280 first-class games in New Zealand. This included 44 games, 35 tests for the All Blacks, 10 games for New Zealand Maori, 18 games for Horowhenua, 89 games for Auckland, and 99 games for the Blues. The Spencer family cannot be here tonight, so representing Carlos tonight is the Chief Executive of Horowhenua Rugby Football Union, Corey Kennett. England in 1889. The family came to New Zealand when Bernard was 2 years old. He had 4 older brothers. They had a great outdoor life, especially swimming and yachting. He started at Wellington College at age 9. At age 16, he represented New Zealand at swimming in Australia. From 1904 to 1911, he won 13 gold and 4 silver medals at New Zealand Swimming Championships. In December 1904, he was forced to leave college by his father to become an apprentice dentist. He was in Morrinsville for 1 year as a locum. He then moved to Levin and was employed in the surgery of Stuart Mackenzie. He had a full sporting and social life whilst in Levin. As well as swimming, he played bridge, golf, tennis, roller skated and rugby, including 3 games for the Horowhenua team in 1912 and 13. He was often featured in the local paper as a very strong player and goal kicker. He was the club captain of the swimming club and was made a life member in 1917. He was also made a life member of the Levin club in 1917. He was one of the young men from Horowhenua who were mounted special constables during the 1913 dock strikes in Wellington, along with his best friend Ledley Adkin, and there's a photo of those young men in the library, up on the big wall. His war exploits are well documented. He won his VC at Ancre in France in November 1916. He also lost 2 brothers, one at Gallipoli and one at Messines. He was offered and accepted the appointment of General Officer commanding the New Zealand Expeditionary Force in World War II. By all accounts, he looked after and trained his men to the highest standards possible. He was wounded over 19 times over the 2 campaigns. In 1922, he married Barbara McLaren near Jekyll. They had one son, Paul, who also fought for New Zealand in World War II. In 1946, he became the Governor General of New Zealand. He described this 6 years as some of his happiest. He died in 1963. Now, we did find a grandnephew living in Nelson, but he couldn't attend. And as an aside, his grandson, who's the 3rd Lord Freiberg, about 3 years ago told me that Bernard threw lots of his papers away, but he always hung on to his Levin papers. The grandson sent me a copy of a letter signed by members of the Levin Club on Bernard getting his VC, which is a great document. It's all signed there with all those names on it, so you can have a look at it later. Representing Bernard Freiberg tonight, I hope he's here, is he? I haven't seen him. Is the president of the Levin Club, Ross Campbell?
Yep.
Ross, yes,
Yep.
Philip Ralston was born in Otaki in 1949. His family had been in the Horowhenua district since 1900. He was educated at Levin North Primary School and then Horowhenua College, and he was head boy here in 1967. Phil had a passion for farming, stemming from his father's involvement as an innovative farmer. At Massey University, he completed his bachelor's in agricultural science, specialising in agronomy in 1972 and his master's in 1974. He obtained a scholarship to enable him to embark on a doctorate. He joined DSIR and after 18 months headed to Oregon State University to begin postgrad studies. His thesis was on seed production in red and white clover. He returned to Palmerston North and DSIR in 1978. Phil's first trip to China was in 1983, where a group of New Zealanders were contracted by the Chinese government to establish a model farm to grow seed. He has been actively involved in over 30 research projects on grassland and livestock production in China. Over time, he has become recognised as an international expert in forage seed production, grassland farming systems, pastoral agronomy and soil research. In 2015, after 30 years and 60 visits to China, he received the International Science and Technology Cooperation Award, with the ceremony held in the Great Hall of the People of China, attended by more than 3,000 people, including their president. He also won the 2017 Kia Award for a world-class New Zealander. After 40 years working for the Foundation for Arable Research, Phil is technically retired, however he still works. He is married to Shirley and they have 5 children. We welcome tonight Dr. Philip Colston. Saying a few words on behalf of all the recipients.
Well, it's certainly humbling to be amongst some very well-known historical families and other well-known families. The names like MacDonald, Prowse, Bartholomew, the names that were part of our family interactions and families we all knew well. I'd like also just to acknowledge my sister Annette who brought me down here today because she was a head girl here in 1968, so better go gender balance there. My years at Horowhenua, my dad was a foundation pupil here. I had 5 great years here. My interest and passion in science came from a science teacher by the name of Vance Wiley, a Maori All Black. He had the huge hands and he could do the most delicate dissections with. But he really lit a fire with me and my passion for science that has taken me on a journey to work in about 30 different countries with many poor communities. To Heritage Horowhenua, thank you for the opportunity on behalf of the families represented here for this initiative and Walk of Fame. I look with interest to see what Oxford Street looks like. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. Phil's taller than me. Thank you, Phil, for those very kind words. Looking around not only at the 19 people representing the plaques that have been awarded tonight, but the other 100 odd of you people all have made, in your own ways, valuable contributions to the Horowhenua. You may have only lived here a short time. You may have roots that go way back, as we've seen illustrated. Be proud of who you are, what you are, and where we are here tonight. So, to all of these 19 people, we just ask you if you can bear with us for a couple of minutes. Maybe the press or people want to just get the 19 of you. We'll then break for family photos and supper. And don't forget, poor old Bazza Watkins. Where's Bazza? He's very modestly hiding. If you see a chap asleep in a sleeping bag, don't give him a boot. It'll be poor old Bazza catching up with some sleep tomorrow morning. So if you do have the opportunity to be in the main street, walk along, have a look at the plaques. They'll all be there smiling back at you. So thank you very much again, everybody. Thank you. Quick photos just our recipients, if the second row could stand, that might help as well. If we could just get the second row to stand.